The following weekend came faster than Ethan expected. Danny had invited him to join a small trip to their family's lake house, just a couple of hours outside the city. It was supposed to be casual: video games, fishing, barbecue, the usual guy's weekend. Ethan hadn't thought twice before agreeing. But when Julia appeared in the driveway, sliding her sunglasses into place as she loaded the back of the SUV, Ethan realized he hadn't asked the right questions. She was coming too. "Relax," Danny had grinned, slapping him on the back as if reading his thoughts. "Mom just wants to get out of the city for a bit. She won't bother us." But Ethan wasn't worried about being bothered. Not in the way Danny meant. The ride-up was tense, for Ethan at least. Danny dozed in the passenger seat with headphones in, while Julia drove, humming softly to some playlist on the stereo. Ethan sat in the back, staring out the window, trying to ignore the way his eyes kept drifting to her reflection in the rearview mirror. Every once in a while, he caught her eyes flicking up, meeting his for just a second before sliding away. By the time they pulled into the long gravel driveway of the lake house, Ethan's nerves were wound tight. The place was beautiful. A wide, two-story cabin with a wraparound porch, nestled between tall trees. The lake shimmered just beyond, sunlight glinting off the water. "Man, I forgot how awesome this place is," Danny said, stretching as he hopped out. "Dibs on the upstairs bedroom with the lake view." He bounded inside before Ethan could reply. That left Ethan and Julia alone outside, unloading bags from the trunk. She pulled her sunglasses off, tucking them into her hair, and glanced at him with a small smile. "Glad you came along," she said. Ethan shifted the weight of his backpack. "Yeah, it's nice out here." She tilted her head, studying him for a moment longer than necessary. "It is." The silence that followed wasn't awkward, at least not for her. For Ethan, it was charged, like static, just before a storm. Inside, Danny was already making noise, calling out about finding the game console. Julia shook her head, amused, then turned back to Ethan. "Come on," she said, lifting a cooler. "Help me with this before he eats everything in the house." The first few hours passed easily enough. Danny kept himself busy, setting up games and blasting music upstairs, leaving Ethan and Julia in the kitchen preparing food. Julia worked with casual efficiency, sliding vegetables across a cutting board, opening cabinets like she'd done this 1,000 times before. Ethan tried to focus on his own task stacking plates, checking the grill outside, but it was impossible not to notice her. The way sunlight spilled through the window, catching the strands of her hair, the faint, clean scent of her perfume. The curve of her smile when she teased him for putting forks in the wrong drawer. "You're distracted," she said suddenly, not looking up from her chopping. Ethan nearly dropped the stack of plates. "Well, what?" "No, I'm not." Her lips curved faintly. "Mm-hmm." He opened his mouth to argue, but Danny's voice boomed from upstairs, breaking the moment. "Ethan, bring me the other controller." Ethan exhaled, relieved for the interruption, and hurried out of the kitchen. But Julia's knowing smile followed him all the way up the stairs. Later, as the sun dipped lower and the air cooled, the three of them carried food out to the porch. They grilled, joked, and laughed, just like old times. Danny was in his element, narrating stories, making Julia roll her eyes, and keeping the energy high. But Ethan felt the undercurrent. Every time Julia passed him a plate, her fingers brushed his just a little too long. Every glance across the table lingered a second more than it should have. And every laugh of hers seemed meant for him, not Danny. By the time the stars began to appear, Ethan wasn't sure how much longer he could pretend not to notice. After dinner, Danny disappeared back upstairs, promising a marathon of late-night gaming. Julia began clearing the table, stacking plates with quiet efficiency. Ethan stood to help, reaching for the last glass. Their hands touched. For a moment, neither of them moved. Julia's eyes lifted, locking onto his. The air between them tightened, heavy and electric. Then she smiled, soft but deliberate. "Thank you." It was nothing, just 2 words. But the way she said it, like it carried a meaning, only he was meant to understand, left Ethan frozen in place long after she turned away. That night, as he lay in the lake house's guest bed, Listening to the faint sounds of the forest outside, Ethan knew one thing for certain. This weekend was going to test every ounce of his self-control, and Julia knew it. The night had settled over the lake house, thick and quiet. The stars scattered across the sky reflected in the water outside, casting a silvery glow through the open porch windows. The house felt alive in a different way now, alive with secrets, with unspoken tension, and with a kind of electricity that made Ethan's chest tighten. Danny had fallen asleep hours ago, leaving his controller abandoned on the sofa upstairs. Ethan had stayed behind in the living room, helping Julia tidy up the dishes. She moved around the space with that effortless grace he couldn't stop noticing. Even the casual tilt of her head, the way her hair caught the soft lamplight, made him feel like the world had shrunk to just the two of them. "Here, let me help you with that," Ethan said, reaching for a stack of plates she was carrying. She smiled at him, soft and knowing. "You're already doing enough, Ethan. I think I like seeing you take charge." The words made his stomach flutter. He cleared his throat. "Oh, I'm just trying to help." Julia placed the plates on the counter and leaned against it, crossing her arms loosely. Her eyes stayed on him, warm and attentive, but the look carried something else, something subtle, teasing. "You've changed since last summer," she said, voice calm but deliberate. "Not just taller or stronger, more aware." Ethan swallowed hard, unsure what she meant. Aware of what? She tilted her head, the soft light catching her profile. Of yourself, your presence, the way you move through the world, the way you notice things. He felt heat creep up his neck. He wasn't sure how to respond, but before he could, Julia moved closer, brushing past him as she carried the last few glasses to the table. The warmth of her body passed over him, subtle, but enough to make him stiffen. She turned toward him with a soft chuckle. "Relax, Ethan. You don't have to be so tense. I'm not going to bite." "I'm not tense," he replied quickly, heart hammering. "Mm-hmm," she thought, her lips curved in that faint, playful way that made him want to melt and stand taller at the same time. After a few more minutes of clearing up, Julia suggested they step onto the porch. The night air was cool, carrying the scent of the lake and pine trees. Ethan followed her quietly, his hands in his pockets, stealing glances at her as she leaned against the railing. She looked out at the water, arms resting on the rail, the moonlight illuminating her face. It was breathtaking. For a moment, Ethan forgot to breathe. "You like it here?" she asked softly, not looking at him. "It's amazing," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. She glanced at him then, a spark of something unreadable in her eyes. "You've been quiet tonight, thinking about something?" He hesitated. "Maybe just thinking." Julia tilted her head, watching him. "About me." Ethan felt his pulse spike. He stumbled over his words. No, I don't know." She laughed softly, the sound curling around him like a ribbon of warmth. "You do. Don't lie to me, Ethan. You've been thinking about me since yesterday, haven't you?" He couldn't deny it. He didn't even try. His hands tightened in his pockets, and his stomach fluttered. "You're right," he admitted quietly. Her smile widened slightly, not mocking, not harsh, just knowing. She took a small step closer, so close that he could feel the faint warmth radiating from her body. "Good," she murmured. For a while they just stood there in silence, the world beyond the porch fading away. Ethan wanted to speak, to say something, anything. But Julia's presence had stolen his words. He was caught in the gravity of her eyes, the subtle curve of her lips, the soft rhythm of her breathing. Then she tilted her head toward him, softly. "Ethan, do you ever wonder what it would be like if things were different?" He froze. "Different? How?" Her smile was slow, teasing, a deliberate stretch of tension. "If we weren't bound by what's expected, if you weren't Danny's friend, if I weren't his mom." The words lingered in the cool night air. Ethan's chest tightened. He didn't answer immediately because what could he say? What could he even think? His mind was a whirlwind of confusion, desire, guilt, and fascination. Julia stepped even closer, just enough that he could feel the gentle sway of her hair brush his arm. "Don't be afraid, Ethan. I just want you to Notice. That's all. He did. He noticed. Every inch of her presence, every unspoken word, every lingering glance. And in that quiet moment, Ethan realized there was no turning back. Because the current that had started at Danny's house was pulling him in. Unstoppable, dangerous, and intoxicating. The night stretched on. The stars twinkled above. The lake shimmered. And the air between Ethan and Julia seemed to hum with anticipation. Danny slept upstairs, oblivious. The house, the world, everything belonged to them for these few stolen hours. And Ethan knew, with an ache he couldn't hide, that the weekend had only just begun. The living room was quiet now. The glow from the fireplace cast flickering shadows across the walls, painting Julia in soft golden light. Ethan stood near the window, pretending to admire the view, but his mind was elsewhere, entirely focused on her. Julia moved around the room with ease, picking up blankets and folding them neatly. But each movement seemed deliberate, drawing Ethan's gaze more than he cared to admit. "You know," she said suddenly, her voice smooth, teasing, "I used to think weekends like this were boring when Danny was younger." Ethan turned, curiosity piqued. "Really?" She leaned against the sofa, crossing one leg over the other, her robe slipping slightly at the shoulder. "Yes. Too much energy, too much noise, too many little hands trying to touch everything." Her eyes flicked toward him, glimmering with something he couldn't name. But now, it's different. Ethan felt his stomach tighten. "Different how?" Julia smiled, a slow, knowing curve of her lips. Relaxed, calm, almost interesting. He swallowed hard, trying to hide the effect her words had on him. But she noticed. Of course, she noticed. "You're not going to look away," she murmured, tilting her head. "Not when it's just us. Not when Danny isn't around." Ethan's throat went dry. I'm just curious," she interrupted softly, playful but sharp. "Excited? Nervous? All of the above?" Her eyes held his, unwavering. Ethan felt the pull, the gravity, like he was teetering on the edge of something he wasn't supposed to fall into, but desperately wanted to. He could barely speak. "A little. Yeah." Julia's smile widened, just a fraction, but it was enough. "Good. You should feel something. You should know that. You're not imagining things." The way she said it, slow and deliberate, sent a shiver down his spine. She took a small step closer, the flicker of firelight tracing the curves of her face and body. "I like seeing you like this," she whispered. Ethan's hands clenched at his sides. He felt exposed, raw, vulnerable, and yet alive in a way he had never been before. Julia tilted her head, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "I wonder," she said softly, almost to herself, "what it would be like. If we weren't just what we appear to be. If you weren't just Danny's friend, if I weren't just his mom." The words hit him like lightning. His heart raced. The air seemed thicker, charged. His mind scrambled, trying to process what she had just said. She noticed, of course. Her lips curved in that teasing smile again. "You're thinking about it," she murmured. "I can see it." Ethan's pulse thundered in his ears. He wanted to respond. He wanted to speak, but nothing came out. Only the awareness of her presence, the heat of the room, the firelight flickering across her skin. Julia stepped closer, just enough that the scent of her perfume enveloped him. "Don't be afraid, Ethan," she whispered. "I just want you to notice. That's all." He did. Every detail, every word, every glance. He noticed it all. And he knew, somewhere deep down, that nothing would be the same after this weekend. The tension hung in the air, heavy but not uncomfortable. It was electric, charged, intimate, dangerous. And Ethan couldn't move. Not away, not toward. Only caught in the gravity of her gaze, her presence, the unspoken promise lingering between them. For a moment, time seemed to stretch. The world outside the cabin ceased to exist. The lake, the stars, Danny upstairs, none of it mattered. Only Julia, only the warmth and danger she radiated, only the pull he couldn't resist. Finally, she took a step back, letting the tension linger but retreating just enough to give him space to breathe. Her voice softened, playful and deliberate. "Good night, Ethan. Sleep well, and try not to think too much about me." Her smile was teasing, almost cruel in its timing, but Ethan could only nod, heart racing, mind spinning. He watched her walk toward the kitchen, the silk of her robe catching the firelight. And when she disappeared around the corner, the silence hit him like a wave. He was alone, and yet not alone. The pull of her presence lingered in the room, in his chest, in every nerve ending. Ethan sank into the sofa, trying to calm his racing thoughts, knowing deep down that this weekend, this house, this night would change everything. He didn't sleep much after that, because the memory of Julia's gaze, her words, the subtle closeness, haunted him. And he knew, with a certainty that made his chest ache, that it wasn't over, not by a long shot, by a... The clock on the wall ticked softly, a quiet metronome in the still night. Ethan sat on the sofa, the firelight flickering across the room, throwing shadows over Julia as she moved about, tidying the space one last time before heading upstairs. He tried to focus on anything else. The lake outside, the crackle of the fire, the hum of the refrigerator. But his mind refused to comply. She glanced over her shoulder at him, a small, knowing smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "You've been awfully quiet tonight," she said. Ethan swallowed hard, caught off guard by the directness. Just tired, I guess." Julia's eyes softened, but the playful glint remained. "Sure, tired. That's what we'll call it." He shifted, unsure where to look. Her presence was overwhelming, warm, inviting, and somehow untouchable all at once. She set a blanket over the back of the sofa, the movement slow, deliberate. "Come, sit closer," she suggested, her voice low and gentle, almost a whisper meant only for him. Ethan's pulse raced. His rational mind screamed for restraint, but the magnetic pull of her words and her proximity was too strong to resist. He moved slightly closer, careful to keep a respectful distance, but close enough that the warmth from her body brushed against him. "You're noticing me, aren't you?" Julia asked softly, her head tilted, eyes sparkling with mischief. Ethan could only nod. Words failed him. "Good," she murmured, stepping a fraction closer. "I like that. I like that you see me, truly see me." The tension in the room was palpable. It wasn't loud or aggressive, just a quiet, simmering electricity that made every nerve ending in Ethan's body tingle. Julia's gaze lingered on him, steady and unflinching. "It's rare," she said, "to find someone who notices the little things, who pays attention." Ethan's breath hitched. I notice." Her smile widened slightly, teasing but soft. She brushed a strand of hair behind her ear, a gesture that made Ethan's chest tighten. "Good," she repeated. "That's all I wanted. Just to be noticed. That's all." For a moment, neither spoke. The fire crackled, casting warm light and deep shadows across the room. The house was silent except for the faint sounds of the night outside, the whisper of wind through the trees, the distant lapping of the lake. Ethan's heart pounded. He wanted to move closer, to say something, anything, but he couldn't. Not yet. Not with the line between curiosity and desire so carefully balanced. Julia seemed to sense his inner struggle. She took another step closer, the scent of her perfume enveloping him. Her voice was barely audible. "You feel it too, don't you?" "Yes," he whispered, almost ashamed. Her eyes softened. "Then don't fight it. Not tonight. Just feel it. Let yourself notice." The firelight reflected in her eyes, making them shimmer with an intensity that made Ethan's stomach twist. For a long moment, they simply stood there, two people caught in the same electric pull, the world outside forgotten. Finally, Julia stepped back, giving him a fraction of space, and smiled softly. "Sleep well, Ethan. The lake will be waiting in the morning, and so will the rest of us." Ethan watched her retreat upstairs, the silk of her robe swaying gently. The silence returned, heavy and charged. He sank into the sofa, staring into the fire, mind racing. The weekend had only just begun, and yet he already knew. Whatever happened over these few stolen hours, nothing would be the same afterward. Because the pull between them was undeniable. because the curiosity, the tension, the attraction, they were all real. And because, no matter how careful he tried to be, Ethan knew he wouldn't be able to resist for long. The morning sun filtered softly through the thin curtains, casting a warm glow across the lake house bedroom. Ethan stirred, blinking against the light, and realized he'd slept lightly, restless and aware of every creak in the wooden floorboards. He stretched and slipped out of bed, careful not to wake Danny, who was still snoring lightly. Downstairs, the kitchen smelled faintly of coffee and toasted bread. He moved quietly, drawn by the comforting scents and by the faint sound of Julia humming softly. She was at the counter, hands busy with breakfast preparations. The robe she wore from the night before had been replaced by a casual fitted top and jeans, the kind of effortless outfit that somehow made her look both approachable and mesmerizing. Ethan froze at the doorway, unsure whether to announce his presence. But before he could, she turned, catching his gaze. "Good morning," she said, her voice smooth, teasing, with that same subtle spark that made his chest tighten. Morning," he replied, trying to keep his tone casual, though his pulse raced. Julia smiled, tilting her head slightly. "You're up early. Can't sleep much last night?" He swallowed, caught off guard by the directness. I guess not. Just restless." Her eyes softened, but the playful glint lingered. "It happens sometimes," she said, taking a slow sip of her coffee, "especially when you're not used to being around certain people." Ethan's stomach twisted. He knew exactly what she meant. Julia set her mug down and leaned against the counter, arms crossed loosely. Her gaze held his, unwavering. "Do you want to help with breakfast? Or are you just going to stand there?" He moved closer, trying to appear casual, but his awareness of her proximity made him stumble over his words. I can help." "Good," she said, and the soft curve of her smile made him catch his breath. They moved around the kitchen together, Julia showing him where to set plates, how to arrange the food. Every movement was loaded with subtle tension hands, brushing, fleeting glances, and quiet laughter that seemed to carry more than just amusement. At one point, Ethan reached past her to grab a plate and their hands brushed. She didn't pull away immediately, letting the touch linger just enough to make his heart race. "You're jumpy," she said softly, her eyes sparkling. "You can't hide it, you know." "I'm not," he stammered, though the heat in his chest betrayed him. She tilted her head, studying him, the curve of her lips teasing. "Mm-hmm. Sure. Not at all." After breakfast, Danny disappeared back upstairs, promising a strategy session for his new video game. Ethan and Julia were left alone again, the house quiet except for the gentle sounds of the lake outside. She leaned casually against the counter, arms crossed, eyes on him. "You've changed a lot since high school," she said. "Not just physically. I mean, you carry yourself differently now. There's something about you." Ethan's pulse spiked. "Something good?" he asked, voice low. Her lips curved in that subtle, teasing smile. "I think you know exactly what I mean." He swallowed hard, feeling the tension coil tighter. Every inch of him was aware of her presence, of the way she seemed to fill the room with warmth and a kind of quiet magnetism he couldn't resist. Julia stepped closer, brushing past him deliberately, letting the faint scent of her perfume brush against him. "I hope you're not thinking too much," she said softly. "Sometimes it's better just to feel." Ethan's breath hitched. "Feel what?" "Everything," she whispered. The day stretched on lazily, the sun rising higher, casting golden light across the porch and the lake beyond. They carried food out, tended to the grill, and cleaned up together. Each shared task, each passing touch, seemed to carry more meaning than the last. Ethan found himself watching her constantly, the way her hair fell across her shoulders, the curve of her smile, the subtle glances that seemed meant for him alone. She caught him looking once and didn't flinch. Instead, she smiled softly, that teasing glint in her eyes growing. "Curious," she said simply. He felt his chest tighten. He couldn't speak. All he could do was nod, aware of the quiet pull between them, the tension simmering just beneath the surface. By the time Danny emerged hours later, buzzing with energy about some game achievement, Ethan felt a strange sense of loss. The moment, the intimacy, the tension. It was gone, replaced by the casual chaos of his friend's presence. Yet Ethan knew deep down that this weekend had only just begun, and Julia knew it too. The afternoon sun slanted through the trees, casting moving shadows across the porch. Ethan had grabbed a book from the shelf, trying to focus, but the words blurred together as his mind wandered to Julia. She was out on the porch, arranging chairs and towels, wearing a light fitted top that hinted at her curves, without being overt. The way the sunlight caught her hair made her glow. He couldn't stop watching. "You're staring," she said suddenly, leaning against the railing, arms crossed, her eyes catching his. Ethan's face flushed. I was just noticing the lake." "The lake?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "Sure, the lake." Her smile was teasing, slow, deliberate. She stepped a little closer, letting her fingers brush the rail just above where Ethan was standing. The subtle movement, combined with her proximity, made his chest tighten. "You've been unusually quiet today," she continued softly, stepping even closer. "Not like you. Not the Ethan I know." I don't know," he admitted, voice low. "Just thinking. Thinking about me?" she asked, her eyes locking on his, playful but intense. Ethan's throat went dry. He wanted to deny it, wanted to say something clever, but he couldn't. "Maybe," he whispered. Julia's lips curved into a soft smile. "Good," she murmured, "because I've noticed you too. Every little glance, every movement. Don't think I miss a thing." Ethan's heart pounded. Her presence, her words, the way she looked at him, it was electric, dangerous, and intoxicating. She moved closer again, the faint scent of her perfume brushing against him. "Relax, Ethan," she said, voice soft, almost a whisper. "You don't need to overthink. Just notice." He nodded, unable to speak. His mind spun, every nerve ending alive with awareness of her presence, her voice, her subtle touch as she adjusted the towel on the chair next to him. "Do you know," she said quietly, tilting her head, "what it's like to have someone notice you?" "Really notice you? To feel seen?" "Yes," he said, his voice trembling slightly. Julia's smile deepened. "Good. Then you understand." She stepped back slightly, giving him just enough space to breathe, but the tension between them didn't lessen. Every glance, every subtle gesture seemed deliberate, designed to keep him on edge. For a long moment, they simply stood there, watching each other, the quiet of the afternoon wrapping around them like a cocoon. "You're thinking about me," she said again, her voice teasing, gentle, confident. "I can see it." "I am," he admitted, swallowing hard. Her eyes softened. "Good," she whispered. "Then don't fight it. Just feel it. Let yourself notice." Ethan's chest tightened. He wanted to step closer, to speak, to do something. But the pull was too strong, and yet he held himself back, caught between desire and the unspoken rules that still tethered him. Julia gave him a small, fleeting smile, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "We have all weekend," she said softly. "Time to explore, carefully." Her words lingered in the warm afternoon air, charged with promise and tension. Ethan felt his pulse race, every nerve on fire, every thought consumed by the awareness of her and the weight of what the weekend might bring. The lake shimmered in the sunlight, but Ethan barely noticed. All that mattered was Julia, her presence, and the pull that had become impossible to ignore. And in that quiet, simmering moment, Ethan realized this weekend would change everything. Because the tension wasn't just a game, it was real, electric, dangerous, and completely irresistible. The afternoon shadows lengthened, stretching across the porch and the interior of the lake house. Ethan found himself unable to concentrate on anything except the way Julia moved around him, the subtle sway of her body, the playful glint in her eyes. She set a chair beside the table, brushing past him intentionally. The warmth of her shoulder grazed his arm, a simple, fleeting touch, yet it sent shivers through his body. "You're very aware of me today," she said softly, almost teasing, almost a statement. Ethan swallowed hard, aware of the flush creeping across his cheeks. "I can't help it." Her smile deepened, soft and knowing. "Good. That's exactly how it should be. I like that you notice." He wanted to look away, to regain control over his thoughts, but her gaze pinned him in place. Every subtle movement, every glance, Every soft word pulled him closer into her orbit. Julia moved around the porch, adjusting cushions and towels, but she kept her eyes on him. "Do you feel it?" she asked softly, tilting her head. "The tension? The energy between us?" "Yes," he admitted quietly, voice barely above a whisper. "Good," she murmured, stepping closer, letting her presence envelop him. "Because I do too. I've felt it all weekend. And now, it's undeniable." Ethan's heart raced. He felt exposed, raw, and yet alive in a way that was both thrilling and terrifying. Julia leaned slightly against the railing, close enough that he could feel the warmth radiating from her. "You're not just Danny's friend, are you?" she asked softly. He hesitated, caught between fear and desire. "No, I'm not." She smiled, teasing but gentle. "Good. That honesty. I like it." The tension thickened. The lake outside shimmered in the sunlight, but the world seemed to shrink around them, leaving only the two of them, the charged air and the unspoken pull that hung heavy between them. At one point, as she leaned down to adjust a cushion, her hair brushed his hand. It was casual, accidental, but deliberate enough to make his pulse spike. "You're jumpy," she observed, tilting her head. "Not like you can hide anything from me." I'm not," he stammered, though the heat rising in his chest betrayed him. Julia smiled knowingly. Sure, not at all." The sun began its slow descent, painting the sky with warm oranges and pinks. Julia moved inside, preparing for dinner, and Ethan followed, drawn by her presence like a magnet. She paused at the counter, glancing back at him with a soft, playful smirk. "Stay close," she said lightly. "We have plenty of time tonight, and I'd like you to notice everything." He nodded, heart hammering, mind spinning. The subtle touches, the looks, the playful words. They had built a tension that was nearly unbearable. The evening promised more moments like this. Stolen glances, subtle brushes, electric pauses. The pull between them was no longer a quiet undercurrent. It was a current strong enough to sweep him off his feet if he let it. And Ethan knew with certainty that made his chest ache that he wanted to let it. The evening settled over the lake house, the golden light fading into a soft twilight that painted the walls in warm hues. Ethan lingered near the kitchen, pretending to help Julia with dinner, though his mind was elsewhere. On her, on every movement, every glance, every subtle gesture that had kept him on edge all day. She moved around the space with effortless grace, carrying a plate of food to the table, brushing past him in a way that made his chest tighten. "You're quiet again," she said softly, setting the plate down, her eyes locking on his. "Thinking about something. Or someone." Ethan swallowed hard, unsure how to answer. I don't know," he admitted, his voice low. Her lips curved into that teasing, knowing smile. "I think you do know." He could feel the warmth of her presence, the subtle scent of her perfume filling the room, the way her gaze seemed to read every thought, every flutter of his heart. Julia took a step closer, just enough that the space between them crackled with tension. "Relax, Ethan," she murmured. "You don't need to overthink, just feel." He nodded, unable to speak, aware of the pull she had on him. For a long moment, they simply stood there, the quiet of the lake house wrapping around them like a cocoon. The world outside the lake, the trees, Danny upstairs, faded into nothing. There was only Julia, only the electricity between them, only the unspoken understanding that something was changing. "You notice everything," she said softly, tilting her head. "Every little glance, every reaction. And I notice you noticing. That's rare." Ethan's chest tightened. I do notice." Her smile deepened, soft and teasing. "Good. That's all I wanted. Just to be seen. Just to be noticed." She leaned slightly against the counter, close enough that he could feel the warmth of her body radiating toward him. "You feel it too, don't you?" she whispered. "Yes," he admitted, voice trembling slightly. Julia's eyes softened. "Then don't fight it. Not tonight. Not here. Just feel it. Let yourself notice." The fire in the fireplace flickered, casting dancing shadows across her face, illuminating the subtle curves of her expression. the sparkle in her eyes. Every detail drew him in. Every small gesture amplified the tension. Every word lingered like a promise. Finally, she stepped back, giving him just enough space to breathe, though the pull remained. "Sleep well tonight, Ethan," she said softly. "And remember, we have all weekend. Time to explore." Carefully. Her words hung in the air, heavy and charged, leaving him breathless, heart pounding, mind spinning with anticipation and curiosity. Ethan sank into the sofa after she retreated, staring into the flickering fire. The tension, the pull, the electricity between them, it was all consuming. He knew that this weekend, this house, this lake, and this woman would change everything. The evening was far from over, and Ethan, caught between desire and restraint, knew he wouldn't be able to forget a single detail, a single glance, a single touch. Because the weekend promised more moments like this: stolen glances, subtle brushes, and the simmering, undeniable pull between them. And he wanted it. He needed it. Even if it was dangerous. Even if it was forbidden. Even if it was Danny's mother. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the large windows, painting the living room in a golden glow. Ethan had woken early, still feeling the lingering tension from the previous evening. Every glance, every brush of Julia's hand, every teasing smile, none of it had left his mind. He moved quietly through the house, trying to find a place where he could think, but the sound of footsteps behind him made him pause. "Good morning," Julia said, leaning against the doorway, her hair slightly tousled, her fitted top accentuating her figure. Her smile was playful, inviting, yet carried the same magnetic tension as before. "Morning," Ethan replied, trying to sound casual, but his voice betrayed him. "You've been avoiding the living room," she said, stepping closer. "Trying to get some peace, are we?" "I just wanted some quiet," he admitted. Her gaze softened, but the teasing glint remained. "Quiet. Sure, but sometimes it's better to face things, don't you think?" Ethan swallowed hard. "Face what exactly?" Her smile deepened. "You know exactly what I mean. The tension, the pull between us. You feel it too, don't you?" "Yes," he whispered. Julia's eyes sparkled, that subtle flirtation still alive. "Good. I like honesty. That's attractive." She stepped closer, just enough that the warmth from her body brushed against his arm. "Relax, Ethan. Don't overthink. Just feel." They moved to the porch, carrying coffee and breakfast. The air was crisp, the lake shimmering in the morning sun. Julia leaned against the railing, letting her gaze drift to the horizon, but she kept one eye on Ethan. "You notice everything, don't you?" she asked, tilting her head, voice soft. Ethan's pulse spiked. I try." She smiled, a slow, knowing curve of her lips. "Good. I like that attention. It's rare, and I notice you noticing." He swallowed hard. Her words, her gaze, her presence, it was magnetic, almost unbearable. Julia stepped a little closer, just enough that their shoulders brushed. "Sometimes it's the little things that matter most," she said softly. "A glance, a smile, a fleeting touch. Do you notice them?" "Yes," he whispered, barely able to speak. Her smile deepened. "Good. Then you understand." The tension between them was almost tangible, a current that seemed to hum in the air. Every glance, every subtle movement carried meaning, and Ethan felt himself pulled further and further into the gravity of her presence. After breakfast, Danny went out for a bike ride, leaving Ethan and Julia alone. The house suddenly felt smaller, more intimate. Every creak of the floorboards, every flicker of light, every subtle scent of her perfume made Ethan aware of every nerve ending in his body. Julia leaned casually against the counter, eyes on him, a soft smile playing on her lips. "You're very aware of me today," she said. Ethan's chest tightened. "I can't help it." Her smile was teasing, soft, inviting. "Good. That's exactly how it should be. I like that you notice." She stepped closer, brushing past him deliberately, letting the warmth of her body brush against his. "Relax, Ethan," she murmured. "Don't overthink. Just feel." He nodded, heart racing, mind spinning, every thought consumed by her and the tension that hung between them. The afternoon stretched on, the sun moving across the sky. shadows lengthening, and Ethan realized that the pull between them had only grown stronger. The weekend was far from over, and with every glance, every word, every touch, Julia had him on the edge of something he couldn't resist, and he didn't want to. Because the tension, the flirtation, the danger, it was intoxicating, and he knew this weekend would change everything. The afternoon light had softened into a warm glow, the lake outside shimmering under the gentle sun. Ethan found himself lingering in the living room, pretending to read a magazine, though his attention was fixed entirely on Julia. She was arranging some dishes on the counter, her movements casual but graceful, her fitted top subtly emphasizing her curves. Every step she took, every glance, every soft smile seemed directed at him, though she never spoke it aloud. "You're very quiet," she said, leaning against the counter, arms crossed. "Thinking, or just staring?" Ethan's cheeks flushed. I'm just paying attention." Julia tilted her head, a soft, teasing smile on her lips. "Paying attention, or noticing me?" Maybe noticing," he admitted, voice low. Her eyes sparkled. "Good. I like honesty. It's rare and attractive." She moved closer, brushing past him, letting the warmth of her body subtly graze his arm. Ethan's pulse spiked. Every nerve ending in his body seemed to tingle. "Relax," she whispered, stepping back slightly, just enough to give him space. "You don't need to overthink. Just feel." Ethan nodded, his mind racing. Her words, her gaze, her presence. It was magnetic, dangerous, yet intoxicating. Later, they moved to the porch, carrying coffee. The sun's rays danced across the lake, but Ethan barely noticed. Julia leaned against the railing, the breeze tossing her hair slightly, and she glanced at him with a playful smirk. "You notice everything," she said softly. "Every glance, every movement. Don't try to hide it from me." "Yes," he whispered. Her smile deepened, teasing but warm. "Good. That honesty, I like it. That attention. It's rare." She stepped a little closer, letting their shoulders brush. "Sometimes it's the little things that matter most," she murmured. "A fleeting touch, a smile, a glance. Do you notice them?" "Yes," he admitted, heart racing. Julia's gaze softened. "Then you understand." As the afternoon stretched on, the tension grew almost unbearable. Every word she spoke, every slight movement, seemed designed to pull him closer into her orbit. Ethan's mind was a whirlwind of desire, curiosity, and hesitation. "You're very aware of me," she said softly, leaning just slightly closer. "And I notice it. I notice you noticing." "I can't help it," he admitted, feeling the heat rise in his chest. Her smile was teasing, slow, deliberate. "Good. That's exactly how it should be. I like that you notice." She brushed past him again. A mere accidental touch, or was it? That made his chest tighten. The subtle scent of her perfume enveloped him, intoxicating and impossible to ignore. "Relax, Ethan," she whispered. "Don't overthink. Just feel. Let yourself notice." He nodded silently, aware of every detail. Her hair, her eyes, the warmth of her presence, the soft tone of her voice, the quiet pull that seemed to hum in the air. The sun lowered, casting long shadows across the porch and living room, bathing everything in warm, golden light. Ethan realized that the tension had reached its peak, and the weekend was far from over. Every glance, every word, every fleeting touch had drawn them closer to something inevitable. And Ethan knew, deep down, he didn't want to resist, because the pull between them was electric, dangerous, and completely irresistible. The late afternoon sun bathed the lake house in a soft, golden light, stretching long shadows across the floor. Ethan wandered into the living room, carrying a glass of water, trying to calm the storm of thoughts and feelings swirling inside him. Julia was there, lounging casually on the sofa, her fitted top subtly accentuating her curves, her hair cascading over one shoulder. She looked up at him with a slow, teasing smile. "You're avoiding eye contact," she said, her voice playful yet soft. "Trying to act casual, but it's not working." Ethan's cheeks flushed. I'm just distracted," he admitted. She tilted her head, eyes sparkling with mischief. "Distracted By what exactly? I can't focus, he stammered, heart racing. Julia's smile deepened. I think I know exactly why. She shifted slightly, letting her hand brush against the sofa cushion just inches from his arm. The movement was subtle, casual, but deliberate. Ethan's pulse spiked. Every nerve ending seemed alive with awareness. You notice everything, don't you? She asked softly, leaning forward slightly. Every glance, every reaction, and I notice you noticing. Yes, he whispered, his voice barely audible. Her lips curved into a soft, knowing smile. Good. That honesty, it's very attractive. And rare. Julia's gaze lingered on him, warm but teasing, filled with unspoken promises. Relax, Ethan, she murmured. Don't overthink. Just feel. Let yourself notice. He nodded silently, aware of every small detail. The way her hair caught the light, the soft tone of her voice, the subtle scent of her perfume, the warmth radiating from her presence. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the porch and living room, Julia stood, stretching lightly. Come, sit with me, she said, patting the sofa beside her. Ethan hesitated, caught between caution and desire, but he found himself moving closer, sliding onto the sofa, careful to maintain a respectful distance, but unable to ignore the pull between them. She glanced at him, her eyes locking with his, teasing yet soft. There, she said, much better, just, relax. The tension was thick, palpable, almost a tangible presence in the room. Every glance, every small gesture, seemed loaded with meaning. Ethan felt a strange mix of excitement and nervousness, awareness and anticipation. You're very aware of me today, she said softly, and I notice it. I notice you noticing. I can't help it, he admitted, feeling the heat rise in his chest. Her smile deepened. Good. That's exactly how it should be. I like that you notice. They sat together in silence, the sun casting warm light across the room, the tension between them almost unbearable. Every second stretched, each glance, each subtle movement pulling them closer. Julia leaned slightly, her hair brushing his shoulder. Sometimes it's the little things that matter most, she murmured. A fleeting touch, a glance, a smile. Do you notice them? Yes, he whispered, breath-catching. Good, she said softly. Then you understand. The world outside the lake, the trees, Danny upstairs, seemed to fade away, leaving only the charged presence of Julia and the undeniable pull between them. Ethan realized the weekend was far from over, and every moment spent near her would be a test of restraint, and he knew he didn't want to resist. The evening had settled into a deep, warm glow, the sun dipping low over the lake, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Ethan found himself lingering near the kitchen, pretending to help with some light cleanup, though his mind was entirely on Julia. She was arranging dishes on the counter, the soft light highlighting the curve of her shoulders, the gentle sway of her movements. Her fitted top clung to her form in a way that was subtle yet impossible to ignore. You're unusually quiet tonight, she said softly, turning to him with a playful, teasing smile. Lost in thought, or just noticing me? Ethan's chest tightened. I'm noticing, he admitted quietly, unable to hide the truth. Her smile deepened, eyes sparkling. Good. That honesty, it's very appealing and rare. She stepped closer, brushing past him lightly, letting the warmth of her presence graze his arm. The subtle touch, combined with the faint scent of her perfume, made his pulse spike. Relax, Ethan, she whispered. Don't overthink, just feel. Let yourself notice. He nodded silently, aware of every small detail, the way her hair caught the light, the soft inflection in her voice, the teasing glint in her eyes. Every second with her was charged, electric, and intoxicating. They moved to the porch, carrying a glass of iced tea. The lake reflected the sky's colors, rippling gently in the evening breeze. Julia leaned against the railing, and Ethan stood beside her, careful to maintain a respectful distance, but unable to ignore the pull between them. You notice everything, she said softly, tilting her head. Every glance, every subtle reaction, and I notice you noticing. Yes, he whispered, heart racing. Her lips curved into a slow, teasing smile. Good. That honesty. I like it. That attention. It's rare. She stepped slightly closer, letting their shoulders brush. Sometimes it's the little things that matter most, she murmured. A fleeting touch, a glance, a smile. Do you notice them? Yes, he admitted, feeling heat rush to his face. Julia's gaze softened. Then you understand. The air between them was thick with tension, almost tangible. Every movement, every glance, every word seemed deliberate, drawing them closer to something inevitable, something both thrilling and forbidden. Ethan felt a strange mix of excitement, nervousness, and anticipation. He was caught in a pull that was impossible to resist, yet thrilling to experience. You're very aware of me today, she said softly, leaning just slightly closer. And I notice it. I notice you noticing. I can't help it, he admitted, voice trembling slightly. Her smile deepened, teasing and warm. Good. That's exactly how it should be. I like that you notice. The sun finally dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the porch and interior of the lake house. Ethan realized that the tension had reached a peak, an electric charge that left him breathless and aware of every subtle gesture, every whispered word. Julia shifted slightly, her hair brushing his arm ever so lightly, and he felt a jolt of awareness. Every glance, every movement, every small touch had built a momentum that was impossible to ignore. Sometimes it's the little things, she murmured softly, leaning closer, that reveal the most. A glance, a fleeting touch. Do you notice? Yes, he whispered, heart pounding. Good, she said softly, eyes sparkling. Then you understand. And this weekend, we have time. Time to explore. Carefully. The words hung in the air, charged with promise, tension, and unspoken possibilities. Ethan felt his chest tighten, mind spinning, aware that every moment with her would leave a lasting mark. Because the weekend, the house, the lake, and Julia herself had changed everything. And he didn't want it to be any other way. The morning light filtered softly through the curtains, painting the room in warm golden hues. Ethan woke slowly, his mind still buzzing from the previous day's tension. Every glance, every fleeting touch, every teasing word from Julia replayed in his thoughts, making his pulse quicken. He decided to step out onto the porch, hoping for some fresh air and clarity. The lake shimmered under the early sun, calm and serene, but his mind was anything but peaceful. Good morning, a familiar voice called softly behind him. Ethan turned to see Julia standing there, holding 2 cups of coffee, her hair falling loosely around her shoulders. Her fitted top accentuated her figure subtly, and her smile was playful, inviting, and undeniably magnetic. Morning, he replied, trying to sound casual, though his heart raced. She stepped closer, handing him a cup. Coffee, you'll need it. Today's going to be interesting. Ethan caught a whiff of her subtle perfume, and for a moment he felt dizzy, his mind racing. Interesting? How? Julia tilted her head, her eyes sparkling with mischief. Oh, you'll see. Just stay alert. Notice everything, every little detail. It matters. They walked down to the dock, the lake stretching before them in serene beauty. Julia leaned casually against the railing, her body close enough that Ethan could feel the warmth radiating off her. You're very attentive, she said softly. I like that. Most people don't notice. The little things. Ethan felt his chest tighten. I notice. Everything. Her smile deepened, teasing yet warm. Good. That's exactly how it should be. I like that you notice. She moved slightly closer, letting their shoulders brush. The contact was subtle, brief, but it sent a jolt of electricity through Ethan. Relax, she murmured. Don't overthink. Just feel. Let yourself notice. Ethan nodded silently, acutely aware of every detail. The softness of her hair, the subtle sway of her body, the warmth of her presence, the teasing light in her eyes. They spent the morning by the water, watching as the sunlight danced across the ripples. Julia occasionally brushed past him, casual touches that made his chest tighten, and every glance she threw his way seemed charged with meaning. You notice everything, don't you? She asked softly. Yes, he whispered, unable to hide the truth. Her eyes sparkled, playful yet intense. Good. That honesty. It's very attractive and rare. She leaned a little closer, her hair brushing his arm, the subtle warmth making his pulse spike. Sometimes it's the little things that matter most, she murmured. A fleeting touch, a glance, a smile. Do you notice them? Yes, he admitted, breath-catching. Julia's smile softened, teasing yet warm. Then you understand. And today, we'll have time. Time to notice even more. Carefully. The tension between them was electric, almost tangible. Every movement, every word, every small touch drew them closer. The pull between them impossible to resist. Ethan felt a mixture of excitement and nervous anticipation. The weekend was far from over, and every moment with Julia promised new temptations, new games, and new challenges to his self-control, because the pull between them was irresistible, and he didn't want to resist. The sun climbed higher, casting warm light over the dock and the shimmering lake. Ethan sat beside Julia, careful to maintain a respectful distance, though every instinct told him to lean closer, to be near her in a way he knew he shouldn't. Julia tilted her head, her eyes glinting mischievously. You're tense, she said softly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Not like yourself. Something on your mind? I don't know, he admitted, heart hammering. It's hard to focus. Her smile deepened, playful but knowing. Ah, I see. I think I know why. Ethan's chest tightened. Every glance, every subtle gesture, every soft laugh made his pulse spike. He wanted to look away, to regain control, but her gaze held him captive. You notice everything, don't you? She murmured, leaning slightly closer, letting the warmth of her body radiate toward him. Yes, he whispered. Her lips curved into a slow, teasing smile. Good, that honesty. It's very appealing, and rare. Julia shifted slightly, brushing her shoulder against his. The contact was fleeting, but deliberate enough to send a jolt through him. Relax, Ethan, she murmured. Don't overthink. Just feel. Notice everything, every little detail. He nodded silently, aware of every movement, every subtle cue, every flicker of expression on her face. The tension was almost unbearable, and yet intoxicating. They stood up, walking along the edge of the dock, the water lapping gently against the wood. Julia occasionally let her hand brush his arm, casual touches that sent sparks through him. You're very aware of me, she said softly, and I notice it. I notice you noticing. I can't help it, he admitted, feeling heat rise in his chest. Her smile was teasing, soft, inviting. Good. That's exactly how it should be. I like that you notice. They stopped, looking out at the lake. The breeze ruffled her hair, and she turned to him with a playful smirk. Sometimes it's the little things that matter most, she murmured. A glance, a fleeting touch. Do you notice them? Yes, he whispered, breath-catching. Julia's gaze softened, teasing yet warm. Then you understand. And today, we'll have time. Time to notice even more. Carefully. The tension was palpable. Every word, every movement, every glance drew them closer, the pull between them undeniable. Ethan felt caught in a storm of desire, curiosity, and restraint. He knew this weekend would be unforgettable. Every second, every look, every subtle touch would linger in his mind long after, because Julia had a way of making him feel alive, electric, and completely enthralled, and he didn't want it to end. The afternoon sunlight bathed the lake in a golden glow, sparkling across the gentle ripples. Ethan and Julia had returned to the living room, carrying drinks, yet neither of them could shake the charged tension that hung in the air. Julia sank onto the sofa, crossing her legs gracefully, her fitted top accentuating her figure in a subtle yet undeniable way. She glanced at Ethan with a playful smirk. You're unusually quiet, she said softly, trying to act casual, but I can see right through you. Ethan's chest tightened. I'm just thinking, he admitted, struggling to steady his racing heart. Her eyes sparkled with mischief. Thinking about me? she asked, tilting her head. I... maybe, he whispered, his voice barely audible. Julia smiled, leaning slightly closer. Good. Honesty suits you, she murmured, letting the warmth of her presence brush against his arm. Ethan felt a jolt run through him. Every glance, every subtle movement, every soft laugh made his pulse spike. He wanted to look away to regain control, but her gaze held him captive. You notice everything, don't you? She asked, a teasing tone in her voice. Yes, he whispered. Her lips curved into a slow, teasing smile. Good. That honesty, it's very appealing. And rare. Julia shifted slightly, her shoulder brushing his once again, casual but deliberate. Relax, Ethan, she whispered. Don't overthink. Just feel. Notice everything. Every little detail. He nodded silently, heart pounding, aware of every movement, every subtle cue, every flicker of expression on her face. The tension was electric, almost unbearable, and yet intoxicating. They spent the afternoon talking, their conversation weaving between mundane topics and teasing flirtatious remarks. Every word, every glance, seemed loaded with unspoken meaning, every subtle gesture a silent challenge. You're very aware of me today, she said softly, her eyes locking on his. And I notice it. I notice you noticing. I can't help it, he admitted, feeling a flush rise in his chest. Her smile was slow, teasing, and warm. Good. That's exactly how it should be. I like that you notice. Julia's gaze softened, her playful energy still present. Sometimes it's the little things that matter most, she murmured. A glance, a fleeting touch. Do you notice them? Yes, he whispered, breath catching. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the living room. Julia leaned back, stretching slightly, letting her hair fall over one shoulder. She gave him a look that was teasing, intimate, and impossible to ignore. Then you understand, she murmured. And today, we have time. Time to notice even more. Carefully. The tension was palpable. Every movement, every glance, every whispered word drew them closer. Ethan felt caught in a storm of desire, curiosity, and restraint. He knew this weekend would be unforgettable. Every second, every look, every subtle touch would leave a lasting impression. Because Julia had a way of making him feel alive, electric, and completely enthralled. And he didn't want it to end. The evening had deepened, shadows stretching long across the lake house. Ethan found himself standing near the window, gazing out at the water. Yet every thought was consumed by Julia. Every glance, every smile, every teasing remark replayed in his mind, making his pulse quicken. Julia walked over, carrying a small tray with snacks. Her movements were casual, yet every step was graceful, every sway deliberate. Her fitted top subtly highlighted her curves, and the playful sparkle in her eyes was impossible to ignore. You're very quiet, she said softly, setting the tray down and leaning against the counter near him. I'm trying to act casual, but I see right through you. I'm just thinking, he admitted, his heart racing uncontrollably. Her lips curved into a slow, teasing smile. Thinking about me? She asked, tilting her head. Maybe, he whispered. Julia stepped slightly closer, brushing past him just enough that the warmth of her presence brushed his arm. Ethan felt a jolt of awareness. Every glance, every subtle gesture made his pulse spike. He wanted to look away, but her gaze held him captive. You notice everything, don't you? She murmured softly. Yes, he admitted. Her smile deepened. Good. That honesty. It's very appealing and rare. She shifted slightly, letting their shoulders brush, casual yet deliberate. Relax, Ethan, she whispered. Don't overthink. Just feel. Notice everything. Every little detail. They moved to the sofa, sitting together, the soft evening light washing over the room. Every glance, every subtle touch, every teasing remark heightened the tension between them. Ethan felt a mix of excitement, nervous anticipation, and a strange, intoxicating pull toward her. You're very aware of me today, she said softly, and I notice it. I notice you noticing. I can't help it, he whispered, feeling heat rise in his chest. Her eyes sparkled, teasing yet warm. Good. That's exactly how it should be. I like that you notice. Julia leaned slightly closer, letting the warmth of her body brush against his arm. Sometimes it's the little things that matter most, she murmured. A glance, a fleeting touch. Do you notice them? Yes, he whispered, breath catching. Her smile softened, playful yet intimate. Then you understand. And tonight, we'll have time. Time to notice even more. Carefully. The tension was almost tangible, a current that seemed to hum through the room. Every word, every glance, every subtle movement drew them closer to something inevitable. Ethan realized that this weekend, every moment with Julia would be charged, unforgettable, and impossible to ignore, and he didn't want it any other way. The morning sunlight spilled through the curtains, casting a golden glow across the living room. Ethan stretched and yawned, trying to shake off the lingering effects of the previous evening. But his thoughts were far from relaxed. Julia's teasing smile, her soft voice, her subtle touches, all replayed vividly in his mind. He found himself wandering to the kitchen, where Julia was already preparing breakfast. Her movements were casual but graceful, every step deliberate. Her fitted top accentuating her figure in a subtle, yet undeniable way. Good morning, she said, handing him a cup of coffee, her smile warm yet teasing. Morning, he replied, trying to sound casual, though his heart raced uncontrollably. Julia leaned against the counter, glancing at him with a playful smirk. You're tense, she said softly. Not like yourself? Something on your mind? I don't know, he admitted. It's hard to focus. Her eyes sparkled, mischievous. I think I know why, she murmured, stepping slightly closer, letting the warmth of her body brush against his arm. Ethan's chest tightened. Every glance, every subtle gesture, every soft laugh made his pulse spike. He wanted to look away, to regain control, but her gaze held him captive. You notice everything, don't you? She whispered, leaning closer. Yes, he admitted, breath catching. Her lips curved into a slow, teasing smile. Good. That honesty. It's very appealing, and rare. She shifted slightly, brushing their shoulders together. The contact was brief, but electric. Relax, Ethan, she murmured. Don't overthink. Just feel. Notice everything. Every little detail. After breakfast, Julia suggested they take a walk along the lake. The air was crisp, filled with the scent of pine and water. Every step they took together seemed deliberate. Every casual touch deliberate enough to ignite tension. You're very aware of me, she said softly, her hand brushing his lightly as they walked. And I notice it. I notice you noticing. I can't help it, he admitted, feeling warmth flood his chest. Her eyes sparkled with a mixture of playfulness and intensity. Good. That's exactly how it should be. I like that you notice. They stopped near a small wooden dock, the lake reflecting the clear blue sky. Julia leaned against the railing, letting the sun warm her skin, and glanced at Ethan with a teasing, intimate smile. Sometimes it's the little things that matter most, she murmured. A fleeting touch, a glance, a smile. Do you notice them? Yes, he whispered, breath catching. Julia's smile softened, playful yet intimate. Then you understand. And today, we'll have time. Time to notice even more. Carefully. The tension between them was almost tangible. Every word, every glance, every subtle movement drawing them closer, the pull impossible to resist. Ethan felt a rush of anticipation. Every moment with Julia promised new temptations, new games, and new tests of his self-control. Because she had a way of making him feel alive, electric, and completely enthralled. And he didn't want it any other way. The sun climbed higher, casting warm light over the lake and the dock. Ethan and Julia walked slowly along the shoreline, their steps in sync, yet every movement seemed charged with meaning. Every brush of their arms, every casual glance carried a tension that neither could ignore. You're unusually quiet today, Julia murmured, her voice soft and teasing, trying to act casual. But it's not working. I'm just thinking, Ethan admitted, struggling to steady his racing heart. Her eyes sparkled mischievously. Thinking about me? I... Maybe, he whispered. Julia smiled, tilting her head, letting the warmth of her body graze his arm ever so slightly. The contact was brief but electric, making his pulse spike. You notice everything, don't you? She asked softly, her gaze locked on his. Yes, he whispered. Her lips curved into a slow, teasing smile. Good. That honesty. It's very appealing and rare. She stepped slightly closer, brushing their shoulders together, casual yet deliberate. Relax, Ethan, she murmured. Don't overthink. Just feel. Notice everything. Every little detail. They reached a small bench by the water, sitting down side by side. Julia leaned slightly toward him, her arm brushing his lightly. The subtle warmth of her body made his chest tighten, and every glance from her eyes seemed loaded with unspoken meaning. You're very aware of me today, she murmured softly. And I notice it. I notice you noticing. I can't help it, he admitted, feeling a flush rise in his chest. Her smile deepened, playful yet warm. Good. That's exactly how it should be. I like that you notice. Julia's gaze softened, teasing yet intimate. Sometimes it's the little things that matter most, she murmured. A fleeting touch, a glance, a smile. Do you notice them? Yes, he whispered, breath-catching. The tension was palpable. Every word, every subtle movement, every fleeting touch drew them closer, the pull between them undeniable. Ethan felt caught in a storm of desire, curiosity, and restraint. The weekend promised to be unforgettable. Every second, every glance, every subtle interaction with Julia left a lasting impression. She leaned back slightly, brushing a strand of hair from her face, giving him a playful, intimate look. Then you understand, she murmured. And today, we'll have time. Time to notice even more. Carefully. The breeze rustled the leaves, the sun glinted off the water, and Ethan realized that every subtle touch, every teasing glance, and every whispered word made his heart pound in anticipation of what the day might hold. Because Julia had a way of making him feel alive, electric, and completely captivated, and he didn't want it any other way. The afternoon sunlight poured through the windows of the lake house, casting a golden glow across the living room. Ethan sat near the sofa, pretending to read, but his eyes kept drifting to Julia. Every glance, every subtle movement, every teasing smile made his pulse quicken. Julia, wearing a fitted top that subtly emphasized her curves, was arranging some books on the coffee table. She glanced at him with a playful smirk. You're unusually quiet, she said softly. Trying to act casual, but I see right through you. I'm just thinking, he admitted, struggling to steady his racing heart. Her eyes sparkled with mischief. Thinking about me? She asked, tilting her head slightly. Maybe, he whispered. Julia leaned slightly closer, letting her hair brush against his shoulder. The contact was subtle, yet electric. Every nerve in Ethan's body seemed alive with awareness. You notice everything, don't you? She murmured softly, her gaze locked on his. Yes, he whispered. Her lips curved into a slow, teasing smile. Good. That honesty. It's very appealing and rare. She shifted slightly, letting their arms brush, casual yet deliberate. Relax, Ethan, she murmured. Don't overthink. Just feel. Notice everything. Every little detail. They moved to the porch, the warm afternoon breeze carrying the scent of pine and water. Julia leaned against the railing, her body close enough that Ethan could feel the warmth radiating from her. Every glance, every subtle gesture, every soft laugh heightened the tension between them. You're very aware of me, she said softly, and I notice it. I notice you noticing. I can't help it, he admitted, feeling a flush rise in his chest. Her smile deepened, playful yet warm. Good. That's exactly how it should be. I like that you notice. And Julia leaned slightly closer, her hair brushing his arm. Sometimes it's the little things that matter most, she murmured. A fleeting touch, a glance, a smile. Do you notice them? Yes, he whispered, breath catching. The tension was palpable. Every movement, every word, Every subtle touch drew them closer, the pull between them undeniable. Ethan realized that the weekend would be unforgettable. Every moment with Julia promised new temptations, new games, and tests of restraint, because she had a way of making him feel alive, electric, and completely captivated. And he didn't want it any other way. The evening light filtered through the windows, casting long shadows across the lake house. Ethan found himself standing near the kitchen, glancing out at the lake, yet his thoughts were consumed by Julia. Every glance, every teasing smile, every subtle touch replayed vividly in his mind. Julia entered, carrying a tray with 2 glasses of iced tea. Her movements were casual but graceful, every step deliberate. Her fitted top subtly highlighted her curves, and the playful sparkle in her eyes was impossible to ignore. "You're unusually quiet," she said softly, setting the tray down and leaning near him. "Trying to act casual. But I see right through you. I'm just thinking," he admitted, heart racing. Her lips curved into a slow, teasing smile. "Thinking about me?" she asked, tilting her head. Maybe," he whispered. Julia stepped closer, letting the warmth of her body brush against his arm. The contact was fleeting, yet it sent a jolt of awareness through him. Every glance, every subtle movement, every soft laugh made his pulse spike. "You notice everything, don't you?" she murmured softly. "Yes," he admitted. Her smile deepened. "Good. That honesty, it's very appealing. And rare." She shifted slightly, letting their shoulders brush. "Relax, Ethan," she whispered. "Don't overthink. Just feel. Notice everything. Every little detail." They moved to the sofa, sitting side by side. Julia leaned slightly toward him, her arm brushing his lightly. The subtle warmth of her body made his chest tighten, and every glance from her eyes seemed loaded with unspoken meaning. "You're very aware of me today," she murmured softly, "and I notice it. I notice you noticing." I can't help it," he admitted, feeling a flush rise in his chest. Her smile was playful yet warm. "Good. That's exactly how it should be. I like that you notice." Julia's gaze softened, teasing yet intimate. "Sometimes it's the little things that matter most," she murmured. "A fleeting touch, a glance, a smile. Do you notice them?" "Yes," he whispered, breath catching. The tension was almost tangible. Every word, every subtle movement, every fleeting touch drew them closer, the pull between them undeniable. Ethan realized that the weekend, every second, every glance, every subtle interaction with Julia would be unforgettable, because Julia had a way of making him feel alive, electric, and completely captivated, and he didn't want it any other way. The last day of the weekend had arrived, and Ethan awoke with a fluttering heart. Every glance, every teasing remark, every subtle touch from Julia over the past days played endlessly in his mind. He tried to act casual, but the pull toward her was impossible to ignore. He found Julia in the kitchen, casually preparing breakfast. Her fitted top and casual pants framed her figure perfectly, and her hair fell loosely around her shoulders. The sunlight streaming through the window highlighted her soft curves and the playful sparkle in her eyes. "Good morning," she said, handing him a cup of coffee. Her smile was warm yet teasing. "Morning," he replied, trying to steady his racing heart. "You're tense," she observed softly, leaning slightly closer, letting the warmth of her body brush his arm. "Not like yourself. Something on your mind?" I don't know," he admitted. "It's hard to focus." Her eyes sparkled mischievously. "I think I know why," she murmured, tilting her head. Ethan's chest tightened. Every glance, every subtle gesture, every soft laugh made his pulse spike. He wanted to look away, to regain control, but her gaze held him captive. "You notice everything, don't you?" she whispered softly. "Yes," he admitted. Her lips curved into a teasing smile. "Good. That honesty? It's very appealing and rare." She shifted slightly, letting their shoulders brush casually. "Relax, Ethan," she murmured. "Don't overthink. Just feel. Notice everything. Every little detail." They spent the morning walking along the lake one last time, the tension between them almost unbearable. Every brush of her hand against his, every fleeting glance, every teasing smile drove him wild with anticipation. "You're very aware of me today," she said softly, "and I notice it. I notice you noticing." I I can't help it," he admitted, feeling a flush rise in his chest. Her eyes sparkled with playful intensity. "Good, that's exactly how it should be. Exactly how. I like that you notice." Julia leaned slightly closer, letting the warmth of her body brush against his arm. "Sometimes it's the little things that matter most," she murmured. "A fleeting touch, a glance, a smile. Do you notice them?" "Yes," he whispered, breath catching. The subtle electricity between them seemed to hum in the air. Every word, every glance, every fleeting touch drew them closer, their connection undeniable. Ethan realized that this weekend had changed something. Every second with Julia had left a lasting impression. And now, the tension, the attraction, and the unspoken desire reached a peak that neither could ignore. Back at the house, Julia suggested they sit in the living room for a while. She sank into the sofa, crossing her legs gracefully, and gave him a playful, intimate smile. "You've been very attentive this weekend," she said softly, "and I appreciate it. Not many people notice. Everything. The little things." Ethan felt his chest tighten. I just, I like noticing you," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Julia leaned slightly closer, letting her hair brush his arm. "Good. That honesty, it's very attractive." She moved her hand subtly, resting it near his, and the contact sent a jolt through him. "Sometimes it's the little things that matter most," she murmured. "A fleeting touch, a glance, a smile. You've noticed them all." "Yes," he whispered, unable to hide the truth. The tension was almost unbearable now. Every glance, every word, every subtle touch seemed to hum with electricity. Ethan's mind raced, caught between desire and restraint, curiosity and anticipation. Julia gave him a final, teasing smile. "This weekend has been memorable," she murmured, "and some memories are meant to last." Ethan nodded, breath catching. He knew that nothing would ever be the same again. Every glance, every subtle touch, every playful word from Julia would linger in his mind long after the weekend ended. The unspoken truth hung between them. The weekend had changed everything. And though Danny was still unaware, Ethan realized that what had begun as playful teasing and subtle tension had become something far more intoxicating and unforgettable. As the sun set, casting a golden glow over the lake, Ethan and Julia sat together, side by side, sharing a quiet, intimate moment that neither would ever forget. And for Ethan, one thought lingered above all. Some experiences are unforgettable because they awaken feelings you never knew existed.